This is what I wanted to say. I wanted to say leather, not pleather. You don't want anything in your life to taste like pleather, ever.
Oh my god.
Oh, that's hilarious. I think I've had a lot of bourbon, so now Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Life as the DogMistress. We're back here at DogMaster Distillery, where my husband and I own this great little craft distillery in Columbia, Missouri. If you want to know a little bit more about us, you can always go to our website, listed below, follow us on social media, and learn all about what we do here in Como. But today I have my good friend Paul with me.
Hello.
Paul, you may have, if you live in the Columbia area, you may have seen him behind the bar here. He does make some fantastic drinks for us. And I will say that Paul is kind of known as a beer aficionado, but we are really kind of trying to, like, you know, move him into the world of spirits.
It's really hard work. It's truly terrible.
Well, the good news is he's agreed to be with us today, and he's going to talk to you about how to taste bourbon. So let's get right to it. So the first thing I want to do is bust a myth. And one of those myths is that bourbon has to be made in Kentucky, and that's not true. What is true is that bourbon has certain parameters that have to be met in order to be able to call it a bourbon. So all bourbons are whiskeys, but not all whiskeys are bourbons. There we go. So the first thing that has to be met is the grain bill has to be at least 51% corn. And you will see a wide variety of corn percentages in bourbons, but it has to be at least 51%. The next thing, it has to be aged in a new charred oak barrel. So you have to use a new barrel every single time that you age bourbon, and it has to be oak. It cannot be distilled at any more than 160 proof, so that is very different than things like your vodkas and other spirits. It also has to be barreled at no more than 125 proof. So if you've met those 4 criteria, then you have successfully made bourbon. And so we're going to talk about bourbon today. We're going to taste bourbon today. And I was just saying earlier that I think that I have some sort of affinity for square bottles, because when I was going through our collection deciding what I wanted to focus on today, I just must have some sort of a fantastic affinity for something square, because predominantly square bottles in our liquor cabinet at home. So we're going to taste some things that are very common. Everybody knows Maker's Mark. Now, we do have a little special on the Maker's because it is cask strength. And so we're going to save that for last. And then Blood Oath is also very well known as far as bourbons in the industry. We've got kind of our 4 folks in the middle. These are some craft distilleries. We have Union Horse out of Kansas. We have Few Spirits out of Illinois. Of course, we have DogMaster. And then we have Ranger Creek out of Texas. So we're going to explore the bourbon today. We're going to talk to you a little bit about how to taste, and we're going to taste a few and kind of talk about the different flavor profiles, and hopefully encourage you to go out, and if you don't want to invest in a bunch of bourbons, at least go to a nice bar and see if they'll do a bourbon flight. So Paul, tell us how we should taste bourbon.
So I learned how to taste beer like you taste wine, and the same rules apply for when you're tasting bourbon. You want to put it in your glass, you want to swirl it around, you want to look at it, you want to smell it, all before you even think about tasting it. And whenever I'm at a bar doing a flight, I'll also order ice on the side. When I first taste the bourbon, I always do it neat. I follow this 3-sip rule. First sip is for your brain to figure out that you're actually drinking bourbon. Second sip is to adjust to the flavor profiles to figure out what exactly you're tasting. And then the third sip is to decide whether or not you actually like the stuff. Once you've gone through those 3 sips, if you're extremely happy with what you have, you don't need the ice. It'll melt and become water, which is great. Hydrate, always good. If you think the flavors in your bourbon are too intense, or if it's a very high proof, like the cask strength over here, just throw in a couple of ice cubes, swirl it around to help melt it down, and that water will help open up the flavors, unlock some of the more dense bourbons, like the Blood Oath, and I believe this Texas one is going to be extremely dense as well. And it helps you discover new things. If you go to a whiskey bar, you can say I preferred bourbons that were caramely, leathery molasses, as opposed to spicy, light-bodied, and weedy.
And so knowing what you like is really important, because if you do order a cocktail like an old-fashioned or a Manhattan or something like that, you really want to make sure that you are in love with the bourbon because it's going to be the predominant flavor profile in that cocktail.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And the bourbon can vastly change the cocktail. Like if you put this in a Manhattan, I smelled it before we started rolling, it's incredibly sweet. And I like a very dry Manhattan, so I don't want this in that Manhattan. I would put this in an old fashioned any day of the week, but nowhere near the drier bourbon cocktail.
So there you go.
I've never heard of Few, so let's start there.
All right. So Few Spirits is actually a distillery that Van followed early on when we were kind of looking at the whole idea of creating a craft distillery. And he has just super respect for their process, their business, their products, and clearly their packaging, because if you'll notice, ours is very similar. So we're going to start with Few Spirits. And again, it's a product out of Illinois. And that's pretty exciting because a lot of people don't know or don't realize how much awesomeness actually comes out of the Midwest.
So right off the nose, this is very bright. Mm-hmm. Nice alcohol heat to it.
And I also like to, whenever I'm smelling, like to open my mouth a little bit and take in air through the nose and the mouth. I feel like it kind of gives me a little bit better sense, especially during allergy season.
That's interesting. I like that. It's a little sweet up front, which is nice,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't follow well.
Yeah, I see it.
That sweetness doesn't follow all the way through. It dissipates very nicely right at the middle, and then once it gets to the back, it's a little spicy. It's almost smoky.
I think right up front, what I like about it is it's very bold but balanced with, like you said, the sweetness and the heat. Like it's very bold up front but not overwhelming.
Yeah.
And I think the sweetness balances the boldness of it.
And there's just enough alcohol that the finish doesn't linger. It cleans itself up pretty nicely.
I would agree. Nice job, Few Spirits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. With the ice, it gets a little drier. That sweetness isn't quite as pronounced. It's almost grassy.
I would agree. Yeah, it really does. That ice just takes the sweetness right out of it.
Yeah, I'd make a Manhattan with that.
Nicely done, Few Spirits. All right, Paul, where do you want to take us next?
What kind of dark horse do we have?
Union Horse
Union
out of
Horse.
Kansas.
Well, when they first started, they were dark horse, and then that whole thing. Yeah, let's do it with straight bourbon.
All right. So this is a product out of Kansas, Lennox, Kansas City area. I will also, while he's pouring, I'm going to plug the Missouri Craft Distillery Guild. The Distillers Guild has just put out a map of all the distilleries in Missouri. So you can find that map and you can go on your own distillery expedition. And I'll have information for that below as well. This is much sweeter on the nose to me.
It's a little darker in color too. It's a little more caramel as opposed to gold. I'm surprised. It's got a lighter body than the Few.
Mm-hmm.
From the aroma, I thought it was going to have a little more robust texture on the tongue.
I feel like it does. The sweetness dissipates right away, and it does not have as clean of a finish.
No, but it's not as aggressive it's not as hard on the flavor either. It's a much more subtle.
And I don't mean anything by that, like the finish is nice. So I think an important thing, if you're not one that does a lot of tasting, you have to remember that this is not really good or bad. This is just a continuum of what we're experiencing, and so you may like something that has a very lingering finish. You may not. And so what we're trying to do is just give you some basic information so that when you're tasting, you can kind of be thinking about some of the things that you might be looking for.
It's more my speed with ice. That finish is a little, it makes more sense. There's not as much going on up front because it's been diluted. So all of the flavors packed into the very end, and it's very bright and spicy and dry. It's very dry.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Well done, Union Horse.
Every day.
Alrighty.
Oh, I think
Well.
we should.
3 left.
Let's go home. Let's go DogMaster.
All right. So if you know Van and I personally, you'll know we're house divided. I am very much a fan of our whiskey because I like the higher wheat content. I like the higher malted barley content. It gives it a little sweetness. I also like that kind of heavy smoke that we have on our barrels. Van is no doubt the bourbon fan. He likes that pepper. He likes that true corn flavor right up front. And so we'll see what Paul has to say.
Oh, you know what I have to say.
But they don't, Paul.
Okay.
The world is watching.
That's... So right up front there is a fair amount of corn. Just that great yellow sweet. Very full-bodied, great smooth texture. Again, that black pepper on the finish, I love that so much. It goes into cocktails so well, having that spice, that pepperiness, especially, I don't want to say one note, but having that so strong means you know what flavor you're going in with when you're creating a cocktail, so you know how to adjust for it. And with a spicier bourbon, you can add more ingredients and still have the bourbon come through, just because it can hold up to the sweetness or just straight up sugar of whatever you're adding to it.
Absolutely. And I will say Van was very intentional when we were coming up with our bourbon recipe, if you will. He had a very specific finished product he was looking for. He really likes that boldness. He likes something that really stands up. And I think that is indicative of all of our products, just kind of in their own way. Notwithstanding vodka, vodka is a whole different story and a whole different subject and a whole different reason why you drink it. But for the whiskey and the bourbon and the rum and the gin, it was very intentional to make something very distinct. He wanted you to know that you were drinking DogMaster when you had it.
And when you add ice, it opens up that corn sweetness. It becomes a little more generic, not generically, but I'm not going to say grassy. Grassy is very specific. Vegetable? Green? It's very hard when you're describing a flavor profile because you want to be very careful about the words that you use, because some words people will have a direct connection to something negative. So if you say, like if you don't talk a lot about tequila and you hear someone describe a tequila as sticky, that's not immediately a good thing, but in tequila, it's a very, very good thing, and it's the easiest word. So when you're describing something like this, you don't want to say vegetal. Vegetal kind of brings to mind compost heaps. Or it can have that connotation. This was especially an issue when I was selling beer, was choosing the words to guide someone's experience in the best way possible.
I feel like earthy is a good word for this one.
Yes.
Earthy is just, this is like, this is kind of like a warm blanket. It's got all it's got the pepper, it's got, the earthy flavor, it's got a little sweetness to it, but not too much. So it is definitely, for me, a great example of something that does really hold up to whatever kind of cocktail that you're trying to put in. All right, as usual, well done, DogMaster.
Yeah, that's what I said today.
But we've got 3 more to go. So where are we going to go next?
All right, we're going to go fancy. We're going to do the blood oath.
Perfect.
Now, I have had this one before as well, and I personally love this bourbon so much.
All right. So this is actually kind of a specially limited release bourbon. A lot of your larger, well, really any distillery manufacturer anymore is really capitalizing on the fact that people like things that are fairly rare or that are limited in supply. And so kind of like when we do our double-barreled bourbon for our anniversary, we do a very limited quantity, it goes fast, and so this is one of those things that also has been marketed very well because it is wildly popular, and that does make it wildly expensive. And if my memory serves me right, although these craft products are amazing, I believe that this is at least double in your price point than any of the things, even the cask strength makers in the small bottle, because I know we spend a pretty penny on that as well.
But that also comes in a fantastic box.
Oh yes, it does come in a fantastic box. So if you're all about packaging And if you like to do displaying and things like that, so if you want like your home bar to have fanciness in the background and all that kind of stuff, then this does have some nice packaging. So there you go.
Free advertising.
Absolutely.
So one thing I want to note, this is probably the darkest in color
Yes.
that we've had so far, and it doesn't necessarily tell you what kind of flavor you're getting, but it does kind of tell you how charred the barrels were, because that's what gives you that color transfer.
It's very soft on the nose.
It is. It's very gentle. None of that alcohol burn in the back of your sinuses.
It's also very bold.
It is.
The sweetness and it just comes right on. It definitely has a little heat to it right up front, but it doesn't linger. It's not like it's so overwhelming that you just feel like it's too much. It's a lot.
So first thing I thought of when I tried this was maple syrup, spiced candied nuts,
Oh,
like
yeah.
super Christmassy, fall,
Absolutely.
campfire.
Yes, this speaks to, yeah, just get home from work, throw that, Christmas tree lights on, pour a little bit of this, yeah, some spiced nuts sitting in the chair. So I think probably in the Mad Men era, I would have much more been the husband and the wife, because, I'm thinking I would really love to come home and put my feet up on the ottoman after a hard day and have someone get me some bourbon and read the paper and reflect on the day. So
I mean, who doesn't want that? Really?
I know. So apparently Van and I both need a wife. I don't know. One that would wear an apron, of course.
I'm not wearing an apron.
Well, good to know, Paul. Good to know.
So with the ice added, again, the sweetness is reduced just from dilution of the water, and the spice profile comes out much more strongly. I almost want to say nutmeg.
Yeah.
Nutmeg,
Just
a little cinnamon.
Really, spicy, but not in I think sometimes people take the spicy connotation as hot. They think of like cayenne pepper. They think of like spicy, like Tabasco spicy. This is spicy in a very like cooking or baking way.
Oh,
like
absolutely.
you said, a lot of nutmeg, cinnamon, almost kind of in the like Indian curry kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
The cardamom and just kind of that really heavy, but not in a bad way.
Yeah, because the sweetness is still there, backing everything up and smoothing out the rough edges.
Absolutely.
Just dramatically reduced.
Well done.
Set this aside for later.
There you go. Paul's going to save that one for later. So we have 2 more to go. Okay. So I will say we've done the craft distillery. So we've done the Distillers Trail in Kentucky and Tennessee. And I will say there's like the big boys, so like, makers and all the big folks, but there's also the craft distillers. And we obviously prefer that because it's a little bit more like what we know. So I will tell you, if you ever have the chance to go to Maker's Mark and take the tour, everybody's super knowledgeable, everybody is super friendly, and the facility is beautiful, and you can have a lot of fun. And so like you can dip your own bottle if you want to. They give you a great tasting that comes with the tour. We were kind of drawn in at the cask strength. It's a little unusual, a little fun, and I'm a huge Maker's fan just in general. So I already know I'm going to love this, because clearly, if you can see by how much is left in the bottle, I've had a little bit.
Now, what does cask strength actually mean for the people who don't know?
Aha! So that means it's not proofed at all. So whatever it was put in the barrel at is what it was bottled at. And so that means that it will be different proofs.
111.3 proof.
Yes. So 111.3 proof. Whereas typically you have things that are proofed at the same level for everything. So like our bourbon is always at 90 proof. And so you typically see a consistent proofing until you see something at the cask strength, and then you know it's going to be very forward.
Yes. Oh, you can smell the alcohol. Not in a bad way, but it's it's gonna kick you in your teeth a little bit if you hit it too hard.
Yeah, it definitely has a very strong, whereas the Blood Oak had a very smooth, silky nose to it. This is very like, hey.
Oh, that's hot. That's good. That's hot. And when I say hot, I mean there's that's describing the burning sensation from the alcohol hitting the back of your throat and evaporating a little bit as it adjusts to as it comes up to the body temperature because it's close enough for some of the alcohol to evaporate. And when that runs up into your nose, it'll burn in your sinuses, and a lot of rookie drinkers do that, which is why you don't see a lot of college kids drinking high-end bourbons.
True. But I will say, as much as it is bold, it is so smooth.
Oh, it is.
Like it's hot, but it's not like lingering hotness. It is definitely smooth. It's got your traditional makers, a little bit of that sweetness,
Soft body.
the soft wheat body. I will say, so another probably something that's a little bit different, Makers does a blended barrels. So probably this cask strength, not so much, but a lot of times you have some familiarity with something like Makers because it feels very homogenized, because the flavor profile is very consistent. That's really great marketing. Stuff like ours, we only do single barrel. And so you can have different flavor profiles depending upon, every barrel's a little bit different. The tree that it came from was different. And so that also will impact what you like. And so if you like something that's super consistent, that is totally fine, but you're probably not going to love some of the craft spirits as much as you will love something that's a little bit more mass made, because in a lot of craft spirit settings, they are just doing single barrels, and so they're not doing a lot of blending. They know that there's some different things that happen, when your liquor is maturing in your barrel, heat, time of year, tree, manufacturer of the barrel, all those things definitely go in and play a part, and so keep that in mind as well. Yeah, clearly I could drink this all day.
Wow, with the ice, it becomes a little. Words are hard. It becomes a little fruity.
Fruity is a great word.
Yeah, it's a little. The sweetness is the ice is diluting the alcohol instead of the sugar, or it's diluting more the alcohol than it is the sugar, because there's more alcohol in that, which allows the flavors from the wheat, especially, to come through, and it becomes a little drier, a little fruitier, a little sweeter.
And for me, this is, if I want to have one good stiff drink, then
What's stiff?
this in an old fashioned, because of the fruitiness of it, it's just, see, it's because a lot of folks with old fashions muddle a little bit of fruit. This gives that characteristic without having to add any of the fruit.
Yeah, and then the ice slowly melts, and that fruitiness just builds over time.
So if I only have time, or I'm in some sort of mode where I'm just going to have one cocktail, the Maker's Cask Strength in an old fashioned is really fantastic.
Now I want that.
We have enough to make.
Okay.
All right.
Well, we still have one more to go.
We have one more to go.
The last time I was down in Texas, this was like 2 years ago, I ran across a craft distillery that was using prickly pear cactus
Really?
for their distillate. And they were still relatively new, so most of it was silver stuff.
Right.
But I swear to God, it was the best shine, smoothest shine I'd ever had, and they only filtered it like 2 or 3 times.
That's
it
awesome.
was butter smooth. They had a gin that only had 4 botanicals. It was fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, and that's really where you get in that craft. You can see like the passion and the excitement. It's just like when you go to a really good restaurant, or you go and you get a really nice piece of art that speaks to you. It's really about the energy and the passion that comes through in the product as much as it is about the product. This has, to me, a very different nose than the rest of it.
It really does. It's a little more herbal.
Yes, not sweet at all.
No, yeah, like
everything else, I got at least a little bit of sweetness from the corn.
yeah, let's say maybe dried thyme.
Maybe. But yeah, definitely herbal and leathery.
Mm.
Wow.
That's a lot of leather. That's good. Ooh. It's almost to the point where it's becoming smoky, but it stops just shy of that. It's still very much.
But yes, herbally, leather, very strong, and a really deep finish. Like it doesn't stay with you too long, but it is definitely.
It's very earthy on the back end. It's not very spicy. I want to do cocktails with this. I want to do.
In your social life, everybody should go out and get a bottle of something that maybe they're intrigued by or that they love, and everybody get together for dinner and do some tasting and some sampling, and then you've invested in one bottle, and you have the opportunity to really have them side by side and to think about what you might really like, because
that's what I was trying to say, but much more concisely.
There you go. So this is definitely a cocktail ingredient that I would like for you to explore. So there you have it. We have talked about all kinds of different bourbons. We've talked about very sweet, we've talked about very forward, we've talked about a lot. And I think the biggest thing is to taste them, try them, enjoy them, spend time with friends. The experience is just as much, has just as much value as the actual action. Again, I'm always going to say, try some craft distilleries. Those folks are very hardworking folks, and they are doing a lot of great things. We would not have the industry that we have now without some of our favorites, like Maker's Mark, who really have perfected what good liquor should be, and have really helped us to set the bar and to reach a really great place. So I hope you enjoy this episode. As always, if you have someone in particular you'd like to see me making cocktails with, drinking cocktails with, if you have a particular location you think would be great for our show, because every once in a while the ice maker does go off here, then all you have to do is leave me a comment below, and I am happy to travel the state of Missouri and see all kinds of awesome things and to talk about all the kind of things that are going on here. So thanks, Paul,
of course,
for teaching us.
Happy to help.
And if you're ever in Columbia and you want a really great cocktail, I will tell you Paul can make that for you, because he's the guy. So thanks again for watching, and have a great week.